Okay, welcome. This is probably a little different kind of a session than probably anything else here, just because I'm a bit of an oddity. I had been, I don't know how else to come at that. I first learned about Arbinger back in 1978, just a few decades ago, and was entranced with it then. And because of that, I decided I ought to go get a degree in psychology, because I all of a sudden felt like this would give me something I would know what I was doing with. And I've been doing that in a number of ways. For those of you who know Mike Merchant, I first met him when I went to work for him down at Anasazi. Spent a dozen years with him. That was a fantastic experience in terms of really diving into the material, in terms of working with children and parents who have struggles. And that was very productive. They have an immense, how do you say it, really high rates of success in the industry in terms of not only helping youth, but having that last beyond just the duration of the program. They're measuring it a year later, 3 years later, 5 years later, and still I think the most recent details I've seen is that 83% of the youth do not return to their former problems 5 years later. That's remarkable in my industry. So a couple of years ago, it would be fair to say that I was weary of facilitating. I've been doing it for 25 years and actually really don't like flying anymore. I'm pretty tired of that. So I went to Jim and said, I want to go do something different. He said, that'd be fine. So I dove back into my profession and went to work at a hospital for women with eating disorders. And that I knew was going to be a challenge. It wasn't an area that I was familiar with. I knew I was going to have to do a lot of learning, and did, and found it fascinating. I learned some pieces about humanity just working with the women that nearly floored me. I don't have any data, any statistics on eating disorders, but other than to say about 99% of the people in this country have disordered eating. And I marked all of you down, watching you at the... And if you got that many desserts... So it's a very difficult problem. First thing I'd say is it's got the wrong name. And the second thing I'd say is that this isn't going to be about eating disorders primarily. It's actually going to be about the other thing, a carry box, the worst than box. And the typing gets smaller and smaller, so it makes people move closer to the screen. It's wrong to call it an eating disorder. After I'd been there a couple of months, I called up Terry Warner and said, Terry, can I talk with you? And we spent a couple hours on the phone. And he made a comment in there that really stuck. He made a number of comments that stuck with me. But one of the ones he made was, after he listened to me, he said, calling it an eating disorder is like telling a heroin addict he has an injection disorder. It just doesn't capture it. Doesn't even get close. So even at this point in my life, if I see news clippings, hear something on the news about, like in America, there's an obesity epidemic. In my head, I shake my head. I know it happens. I'm going to shake my head immediately and say, no. Actually, what we do is we have a problem with people dealing with their emotions. So whether an individual, male or female, whether they restrict calories significantly down to 1,000 or 800 calories a day, or they're binging and eating more, all that's done to address feelings so they don't feel. They are numbing out. And we have a hard time with that. We actually don't like emotions. Many of us don't, myself included. They're an oddity. I'm not sure why they were built into the system. Can you keep those comments to yourself, Jason?
I'm a surgeon, gotta say something. Sorry, smartest person in the room.
So that was awesome. So and part of it is in terms of the industry, we haven't cracked the code on eating disorders. We think we know some things, and what we know is helpful. One of the things they've learned a lot about has been about the neuroscience of it, what's going on in the brain. For those of you who are in the field and you know about the amygdala and the pituitary gland and the whatever those other things are, yeah, the limbic system, they're troublemakers. And if we get anxious, if we get depressed, if we get stressed, if we have a test to take, if we have had trauma, PTSD, those kinds of things, it's very easy for the limbic system, aka the lizard brain, as John Powell calls it, takes over. Frontal lobe goes to sleep, limbic system takes over, and it's a looping sort of an exercise. You just stay stuck. You're just going over and over. You think you're thinking really well, but you ain't. It's not happening. How many of you ever gone to take a test in college and you studied like crazy and you walked in, you sat down, and just nothing was there? Anybody ever had that experience? Well, guess what happened? You're trying to take the test with the limbic system, and you need to take it with the frontal lobe. So that actually is very important, helping people who are dealing with anxiety and depression, and that's a big issue. Those are comorbid issues around eating disorders. Other things they really struggle with are perfectionism. Surprise, right? Being in control, and quite frankly, trying to not feel. So I took Arbinger there. I sort of let them know in advance that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to look at eating disorders through the lens of self-deception. Now, I'm more of there's a lot of very good facilitators at Arbinger. I'm not one of them. I'm good at the philosophy. I was really taken by Terry's that. I like to think in very small pieces and work with people on a very individual level, slowly working through things, taking time to really bring to them what's really helped them. And that's what I like doing. I don't like going fast. Seminars are too fast for me. They go over things too quickly, and I just get annoyed doing it. And so I'm not fun as a facilitator. I'm sort of annoying. I try to look like I'm peaceful and it's going okay, but a lot of people can kind of see through that. So I took it in, and that's the first diagram I started with. It's one you all know, I'm thinking. Right? Outward mindset, we draw it out this way. I thought this is going to be amazing. That's really simple. You think of how simple that diagram is? It fell flat. The women, and these were done in groups. So it'd be groups of anywhere from 15 to 25 women in the groups. They were varying all the time. And they were also at different levels in the hospital. They have inpatient, they have residential, they have IOP, they got PHP, they have outpatient. So all these different levels of where they're at. And some of those groups would be mixed together, and those were fascinating. But I thought they're going to love this, but they didn't. But fortunately, I realized this was impenetrable for them. It didn't really speak to them. So I began trying to figure out how to draw it, how to get on, always on a whiteboard. And I'm going to show you a series of photographs. Just pulled out my camera after a group session, would take a picture, or an individual session, and was just I was trying to figure out how to talk to them about this in a way that landed. Okay? So there's one. That makes sense to anybody? This didn't work at all. This is actually drawn from some material that Terry Warner penned probably in the 80s, 1980s. For me, it's the famous chapter 7. He's talking about how we create an ideal self and what we call today a worse than self, but an unworthy self. And how that was created, how that happens. I'll actually share with you a parable he wrote about that later that I think really captures that. So I went there. And I think that's pretty confusing, but let me help a little bit. The ideal self's up here. And the idea is that across a lifetime, we begin to watch things. We're observers. We notice things in our families, in our culture, in school, and this and that. And we notice when we're worried about ourselves, we notice what other people do that gains them approval. Okay? And so we'll go, oh, wow, he was really funny, and everybody liked that. And they're really patting him on the back and getting him to tell more jokes. That's great. Or she's really intelligent, or she did this, or he did that. And we slowly began to accumulate and build, if you will, the kind of sort of characteristics about what we wanted to be. And we felt that if we could do that, people would like me. And I avoid being fake, being rejected. I don't know if that makes sense to anybody, but this was something that kind of made a little bit of sense to them. And I also noticed that when they were building this, they often had days where it didn't work out so well. And they began to think that they were a jerk. They're actually resentful and angry. They were insecure. They were fake. They were boring. So when they didn't get the ideal, they really went the other direction. Well, if I'm not that, I'm this. Very troubling to them. I noticed when a woman's restricting only, no other compensatory behaviors like binging or purging or laxatives involved with that, she's just restricting and she's being able to do that successfully, she feels like she's in control, she's maintaining all that. Okay, it's really working out. And then when all falls apart, and then they binge, I'm no longer just simply a restrictor, the depression was huge and it really hit them hard. They really begin to build feelings of self-hate, self-loathing, and that sort of thing. And so I'm still trying to figure out how to get that simply up there. I mentioned this little data point, and I asked Laura, the doctor from the morning talk, if she knew if it was true or not, because I always want to make sure, and Jason, I may have to ask you the same question. One of the data points that they circulated there was this. When a girl starts to go through puberty, whatever that age is, and they vary, her body actually knows that in advance, and her body will start to take on weight, energy. It's going to need a lot of energy to make those changes to become a woman, to become fertile. The data point they're saying is the body will take on enough weight so that if she does become pregnant, she would be able to carry the baby to term in a famine. You processing that? In a culture of thinness, how many young women do you think start to hate their bodies? Because they can't control it. Yeah, it's high. The percentage is very high. And now they even talk about something called thin privilege. Some people can just blissfully go through life. Annoying people, I can't stand them when I meet them. I don't like standing next to them. But some people, it's a lot easier for them to not do this. For some of us, maybe I should cover this up. Some of us like this stuff. And my son tells me, that's poison. Why are you eating that? I don't know. It tastes good. Right now. And it takes care of my emotions, right? It feels good. So that didn't go very far. So I tried another one. This one was crazy. It essentially was showing a collusion between Ed, eating disorder. They tend to externalize and personify. How do you say that? Who's an English teacher in here? When you turn something into a being? Pardon? Personify. So Ed becomes this thing, and Ed's doing this, and there's a collusion going on between me and Ed. Because Ed makes lots of promises, but also anytime I fall short, Ed hates me and tells me how stupid and incapable and flawed I am. Okay? That didn't go very far either. Nor did that. This got a little bit better. So you can see I'm trying to teach here this relationship. When I stand before another and they're a person, we're just here on equal ground. We're equally human. I talked about boobers, I it and I thou. Now that didn't go anywhere. This got better. Something changed this day, and it was simply because I put this language up here. Here, when I see another as a person, they matter like I matter, and I matter like they matter. And a revolt ensued. The old saying that it's the wounded bird that flutters, they fluttered. Okay? Shoot out with a flock of geese or something, or ducks, shoot with a shotgun, Well, which one you hit? That's the one that's fluttering, right? They responded to 3 words. Like I matter. They were okay with they matter. They were not okay with the idea that they themselves mattered. And I knew I'd hit the sweet spot. I knew this is where we needed to go look. I was stunned that day at the emotions in the room. I was stunned that they knew something was happening. We didn't know much yet about what we were trying to figure out here, but we knew something had happened. I ultimately hardly ever talk about the I deserve. We don't even have up here the I don't deserve box. I don't know why we don't. Should be up there. But this box, we began to realize that's the box. The worse than box. So I tried another way. I realized you can say this in all kinds of ways. So if I'm up here, when I look at others, well, they don't matter like I matter. So if I'm down here, well, I don't matter like they matter. And they knew this space really well. This is also, I began something, I don't remember the timing on this, but I began to really realize something about, again, that very first slide about building a perfect ideal self, an in-control self. This self-justifying image, building that, that happens across time, but I didn't get that far yet. I was just trying to put them up here on a pedestal, and had one of the young clients wrote something. She wrote sort of a poem about that. That got circulated around because it was so succinct and so nailing it for her in terms of what was going on. She really figured out the dynamics of that for her. But I kept trying. This was weird. But at least you see here, I'm actually seeing this building of this ideal self here. They're done across time. There's people I've seen succeeding in this and that. One very interesting session, a woman said, I do this around body parts. She said, I'll look around a group like this and I'll say, oh, I want her nose. And I really like her cheeks. And look at that chin. If I had that chin. And her eyebrows, oh, they're striking. Now, I've often wondered if you could get someone smart with Photoshop and put those faces together and have a look at what that would look like. You know it's not going to work, don't you? She knows it's not going to work, but she can't stop herself. And guess what? Every time she finds better cheeks, better nose, better chin, what does she find out about her? I'm less. I don't have it. I don't have what it takes. I'm not enough. Just bad genes, bad genomes, bad alleles. Which one's right? Genes. All right. This one began to be more where I was starting to land. You can see some commonality now. This is always the central reference point. Starting to notice that these are always built on comparisons. If I go up here, I'm comparing. If I go down here, I'm comparing. Here I'm above people, here I'm beneath them. Okay? Now you can also see there's a comparison going on here, that says compare, between me and the ideal self. So how do you think that battle goes? When I compare myself against an ideal, how does that turn out? I lose every time. You can't win. Even if you get a perfect day, guess what? There's tomorrow. And there's always going to be somebody that's going to challenge that for me. So this is actually a little note here. This says scared of going back to being a nobody. So think about this trap. She was in a larger body. She lost weight down to what's more socially acceptable. People started paying attention to her. Her fear is, if I give up how I eat, how I restrict calories, how I do my eating disorder, if I give that up, I become a nobody again. I can't do it. I'm not going to go there. I can't give up the eating disorder. Look what Ed's done for me. How could you ever expect me to give this up? Okay? This was a day that was fascinating for me. Floored me again. Okay? I'm still trying to work this one out. I think I kind of got it. I'm not sure. So one young woman, she's talking about down here. She says, yeah, this is my primary residence. I live here. And I said, so what would it take for you to get back up here? And she put right there. She says, there's my normal. So I wrote, okay, there's your normal. And she said, yeah, but right here, that's other people's normal. This is an interesting bit of space right here. What's that space about? If this is what it takes for me to be normal, how come other people it's less? The requirements for them are less. So this is what I know. We reveal ourselves in terms of our responses to her, what she's going on with her, right? So for me, it'd be a better than box. I have an interpretation, but I don't think it matches hers. And it did not match hers. And that was the more important learning for me, to realize, these are subtle in terms of how they play out. Because I misread it completely. And she fought with me all the way through, and finally we got to her point, which is, in order for me, given all my flaws, all my faults, it would take that much to even get me to be normal. And then I told her she was wrong. So it would end up like this. And because the women are coming through, they're not always there for a year. They'd be there for 2 or 3 months. They're rotating through. This became pretty much a standard sort of way it got drawn out. So let me ask, it's already written up here. Where would you locate shame in this diagram? So I hopefully many of you know about Brené Brown, her work with shame, vulnerability. So the easy part is to locate shame. So where would you put transparency and vulnerability? Yeah, right back there. So here, I don't have any problem with looking at my flaws and my faults and my shortcomings. I'm okay with doing that here. The way I look at my flaws and shortcomings here is entirely different than the way I look at my flaws and shortcomings here. Does that make sense? So spot on. So I'm okay because, I get that other people have flaws. There's a evenness about that. I get you have flaws. We might, quote, sin differently, but we're still doing the same kind of stuff. We're still struggling in these ways. We still have different kinds of boxes and ways that plays out. But I'm kind of okay with that there. But any other places, I'm not. I lose that equanimity there. I lose that leveling effect there. I go to another place. So part of, you identify transparency and vulnerability here. It actually begins to suggest this idea. This is one I heard from Kazi several years ago. He made this suggestion. It took a few years for it to get really resonance in my brain. But he said, we talk a lot about if I'm here and I'm seeing another as a person, then they matter like I matter, right? That's when I'm seeing them as a person. And Kazi said, look, truth being, for him, he said, for me, I also, in order to actually do that, I have to be willing to be seen. What's that mean in transparency and vulnerability language? I got to show up. I got to let you look at me. I can't have a shield up. I can't have a mask up. I got to be willing to be seen. Now we're starting to get into some ugly ground around the worst. How easy is that? It's not easy, right? This was the day that we were talking about. It's not only all the shoulds and my ideal self, not only the shoulds and the oughts and the musts, it's the should nots. Drew a larger figure and they were, don't be like that woman. You'll never get this, you'll never get that. And then they began to realize something here about this comparison that's going on here with me and the world is, well, they're looking at all the models, the actresses, the influencers, the media, the movies, the rock stars. They're looking at them and the comparisons. Guess who loses every time? So they're seeing the world judging them, but at the same time, they're judging the world, right? I can't be worried about your judgment of you I can't be worried about your judgment of me without already judging you. Those come hand in hand. I attended Jillian Campbell's thing yesterday. She was looking at a lot of the boxes, walking us through those, coaching us through boxes. And so I took in each of those 4 quadrants of every box, there's one of them that, that view of myself, view of others, my emotions. The 4th quadrant is worldview, how I see the world. So the world is, I took them all. Okay, now think about this from a worse than box perspective. Which of these fit with a worse than box? Do I see the world as competitive? Unfair? Dangerous? hard and difficult. It owes me. It's troubled. How about this one? Needs me. Nah. Watching me? Unjust? Against me? Ignoring me? Now, tell me what that teaches you. So I took all those names from all those 4 boxes and put them on that list. You've only crossed off one. What does that tell you? Yeah. Number 1, Jason, it's all one box. And it's not just the worst than box, right? There's different ways to uptake this language. Because to see the world as troubling or troubled, I can see that from a worse than box. I can see that from a better than box, right? That it's watching. I can see that from worse than. I can see that from need to be seen as. I can see that from the I deserve box. So it sort of obliterated those walls for me. So then I changed from the world is to others are. See if these land for you. Others are smarter. They deserve better than me. They're thinner, more competent, deserving. They're enough. They have better skin. Shapelier. They're just better. And they're tired of me. What do those last 2 suggest to you? Louder? Suicide. Self-harm. Right? And then I pushed it a little further. View of self. Stupid. I don't deserve. Fat. Incompetent. A fraud. How many of you ever heard of the imposter syndrome? A lot of hands on that one. Not enough. Never enough. Undesirable, lonely, pathetic, not sick enough. How many of you heard of that? What do you hear when you hear that phrase? Not sick enough. More sick I am, the more attention I need.
Not valid in my suffering.
Not valid in my suffering. In fact, there's a book came out last year called Sick Enough by a woman, a Dr. Gadiani, who's at a eating disorder clinic in Colorado, and she, going through this, she's coming out like a doctor. To me, it was fascinating. Might be boring to most of you. Fascinating to me to learn about something like gastroparesis and how that happens in an eating disorder and how hard and intractable it is and how painful it is to get that corrected. Paralysis of the stomach wall. How many of you know Paul Lawrence Dunbar? He was born in 1872 and died about 40 years later in 1906. We wear the mask that grins and lies. It hides our cheeks and shades our eyes. This debt we pay to human guile. With torn and bleeding hearts we smile, and mouth with myriad subtleties. Why should the world be overwise in counting all our tears and sighs? Nay, let them only see us while we wear the mask. We smile, but, O great Christ, our cries to these from tortured souls arise. We sing, but oh, the clay is vile beneath our feet, and long the mile. But let the world dream otherwise. We wear the mask. That's a pretty stunning poem, written over 150, 100 and some years ago. This is a woman. I just received this text message a week ago. So my email was long and messy, but I'm still thinking and learning, and here's the takeaway. And maybe you know it already. The listening article, tell me more, Brenda Hewlin. The listening article for the perfectionist is for me to listen to me long enough for the debris to disperse. Perfectionists have a lifetime experience of not listening to themselves. And once you do it long enough, your head and heart connect. They reconnect. And it's so beautiful and surprising. And also the process of writing down who Franken-Sue, her name is Sue. The Franken-Sue is this self that I've stitched together, the perfect self. Writing down who Franken-Sue, what is that? Because I thought fake was fancy. I revealed it to myself. Then a distinction occurred. To see it was really fascinating. And then I wrote down how I really am compared to that fake lady, and wow. The unexpected result was self-acceptance, self-compassion. I've heard of that, but I've never been able to relate to it or figure it out. What is there to relate to? If I'm so disconnected from myself, I have no chance of accepting it or me. Thanks for this journey, Chris, whoever you are. We've never met, so just a couple of times on the phone. So quickly, I wanted to share the parable that Terry Warner had written years ago. And he's not in here, so please don't tell him the license I took with it. He tells a story about a young boy on an island. In this story, it's a girl. While playing in the forest, a carefree girl in an island culture encounters a woman of a neighboring tribe. Now, in their you don't do that. You don't meet strangers. They're dangerous. You could die. And they might use you to find out where the village is and go hurt you, the whole village. Okay, so she meets a woman she's never seen before. The girl is wary but intrigued by something the woman is holding. It looks like the head of, and I put in blank, 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 because I want them to fill it in what it is for them. It might be brave, strong, courageous. It might be tall, thin, smart. Whatever it was they were chasing, they were to put that in. It was the head of a very brave, handsome, and courageous young woman, mounted on a pole. When the two became friendlier, the woman shows the girl it's actually a mask covering a wad of leaves. The woman puts the mask on. Very impressive, the girl thinks, and yearns to wear it herself. She identifies with that mask. In her mind, she's sure that wearing it would endow her with the mask's virtues. It would make her blank, 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 courageous, brave, and strong, which she's always wanted most to be. A friendship develops between woman and girl. From time to time, they meet secretly in the forest, and the woman shows the girl a number of wonders unknown in the girl's experience. But what intrigues the girl most is the mask. Because she is discerning, the woman has long sensed the girl's desire, and realizing that their clandestine meetings must soon end, she tells the girl they've met for the last time and presents her the mask as a gift. Understandably, the elated girl begins to wear the mask around her friends. Her mother hears of it and demands an explanation, which the girl gives openly. The mask is so impressive, and the girl looks so strong, brave, and courageous when she wears it that the mother forgoes the punishment ordinarily meted out for unauthorized contact with strangers. Even the village leaders do not castigate the mother as they ordinarily would for her failure to discipline her daughter. They too are impressed by the mask's apparent powers of transformation. You won't be surprised to learn that the girl is envied by all the girls in the village and admired by all the boys. But as the weeks pass, the girl insists on wearing the mask more and more of the time. She no longer has confidence when she's not wearing it. She tells her mother that without it, she's not courageous and she's not brave. It's the mask that makes her courageous, brave, strong. Alone, she's just the opposite. Soon she's never without it. Sleep becomes difficult, not because the mask is uncomfortable, but because the girl has horrible feelings when the village noises die down and she lies quietly on her mat. There are feelings of resentment and hatred. She is certain everyone she knows does not like her. They only like her mask. So she hates herself because, as she now believes, she isn't really courageous, brave, and strong the way the mask makes her appear. She resents the mask for being everything she is not and wishes she were. And she hates and resents all her fellow villagers for not liking her, but liking instead this thing that is not her at all, this image that she no longer dares to remove. So talk to me about that for a moment. If we had 25 women in here with an eating disorder, and you read that parable to them, how do you think they would start thinking about that story? What would pop out to them? What would strike them, do you imagine? What connections might they make? So in that quiet time, which version of herself do you think she comes to? That version or that version? The worst sandbox. Okay. So part of this conversation, why I'm even here today, is I had a conversation with Jim. He disappeared. I had a conversation with Jim 6-8 months ago, and I told him this. I said, I'm meeting with women who have these eating disorders, and I'm learning a lot about the worst than box. That's their primary box. And Jim, They are executives, they're leaders in their companies, and you're teaching them arbingers in their company. And the carry box stuff is not landing for them. They were confused. They didn't understand it. It's only after we went down this path and sort of in this really clumsy way began to talk about what the worse than box is really about, that all of a sudden they go, oh, now I get what Arbinger is trying to talk about in terms of self-deception. I now am self-deceived about who I am. For those of you who bought Terry Warner's book, Self-Betrayal, anyone got through the first page yet? We are massively self-deceived about who we are and what we can do and who we can become. We've so long accepted those masks that are held up. The women identified Ed in the story as being the stranger. And what Ed holds up is, if I can give this to you, and you're going to get something from this. This is my gift to you. It's vacuous, but you're going to like it for a while. So think for a moment. If you're teaching in an organization with men and women, some will have the worse than box. I'm trying to get you to think a little bit about what they might be experiencing if we go through it and teach it. And I don't know, I haven't been teaching it for several years, so I don't know if there's been significant changes in terms of how we talk about the carry boxes. Mitch, in the last session, I asked him to, because he talked to me about this, I asked him to talk about what he'd been doing. And one of the things he says is, they'll take one of these sheets, and it's got a worse than box or a better than box or whatever box is on there, and he literally wraps it around his chest. And all you have to then do is begin imagining scenes and scenarios you might go into. So if I'm the smartest guy box, and I take that into a meeting, I take it here, I take it there. If I got a worse than box, I go into a meeting, I begin to bring this person in that people are already having to respond to my box. Not really me, but my box. How's that going to affect culture? How's that going to affect our ability to get things done and accomplished in the workplace? It's difficult. And how many people might be carrying those at any given time in a company? How many people aren't carrying one? Let's ask the easier question. We're all carrying them. Yeah. Okay. So the next thing, if you're willing to permit me, was what happened with something called collusion. So I've taught a lot of collusion stories. This is one I've taught many times, unfortunately. It's about me. So I'm Chris. And here's my wife. Okay? And the story is Arbinger is holding a fundraising dinner. It's a not-for-profit. So they're holding a fundraising dinner in February in Scottsdale at the Biltmore. Big deal. We've invited in someone famous to come speak. We have a whole bunch of people coming. They get this entertainment. They get a speaker. They make donations. It's all a great idea. Okay? She's known about this for months. Just trying to load the story. And we bought her a new dress, and she's got new accoutrements. She's got, yeah. I go home that night to pick her up and go, and she's not ready. Okay? Does that ever happen in anybody else's life? No. So the way I'd be walking through this is I'd say, okay, so if I get in the box, how might I begin to see Debbie? Tell me what you think. Irresponsible. Pardon? Inconsiderate. Selfish. Forgetful. Oh. Whoa. Vengeful. I want to know who said that. Okay, so in addition, what emotions might I now be feeling? Frustration, anger, annoyed, peeved, ticked, irritated. Okay? So then the next question, of course, is, so what might I do? What might I now do? Sarcasm? Which I think is a gentle way of pointing out her faults. I think that's thoughtful and considerate. What else might I do? Pardon? Criticize. Yeah, so I'm gonna goad, I'm gonna badger. Come on. Awesome. Now there's one just short of going without her. It's that you go outside and honk the horn. Okay, now again, the next question for me has always been, so whose fault do I feel it is that I have to do any of this? Hers. So I blame Debbie. Big B. Now if she gets in a box, how might she see and describe me? Pardon? Impatient.
Women are getting fired up over here.
Why did I marry him? It's all about him. These are coming a bit quicker than all these. So what emotions might she have at this point? Anger. Anger, hurt, irritation. Pardon? Ooh. Oh yeah, she feels disrespect. That's a D. Blah, blah. Okay, so what might she now do? Not go. Yeah, I'm not going to go. Okay, now think for a moment. When she slows down, does that change my point, my view? No. Do I think she's getting better or worse? So what am I now likely to do? More or less? More. And so it just keeps going up, right? But now we're going back to this question. Who would Debbie feel that she has to do any of this? No. Hers. In the worse than box, it's them. This floored me. When I was asking these women, so who would Debbie feel is? I just know they're going to say yours, Chris. And they went, no, it's hers. Yes.
Do they still slow down?
Yeah. Because I've actually thought about this. Go ahead.
It forces him to leave. She doesn't want to see him seeing her. She wants isolation. She wants her own punishment so she can deserve to feel better about herself. Or to feel as bad as she needs to. Right.
So it's useful to have me do the tirade, honk the horn, leave, stomp around. That's useful for her because it proves, in a worse than box, it proves what? I really am that bad. Ever heard of that collusion before? Blew me away. So it kind of feels like, I'd probably say it a little different, Mel. I'd say it's a self-collusion. I'm now colluding with myself. Others are engaged and involved in it, but I'm colluding with myself. So 2 weeks ago, I, quote, finished the wiring in my basement. So I've done the framing, I did the air conditioning, I did the electricity, I did the water, plumbing. We got it sheetrocked. I was too lazy, and Jaden said he'd come help, but he never showed up. And so I went around, I'm doing the final wiring, putting it to the panel and all that, and I realize I have 2 banks of 4 outlets that have no power to them. And the sheetrock's up. I went to self-hate that fast. My wife was gone. She was off having fun. Did I say that right? She was having fun. I was so angry, I wanted to punch out every wall in the basement. I was self-hating, so self-loathing. I could not believe that I was in that space in a millisecond. And I stayed there for 2 days. She sent me texts, very nice texts. She called me. I was busy, couldn't quite answer. I couldn't even bring myself to respond. I was making up all kinds of crap in my head about how she was going to respond. And then I finally went, what am I doing? The amygdala had hijacked me. I'm just lizard braining myself crazy. I couldn't sleep well. I mean, I remember looking at 2, 3. So I'm going, okay, I know what to do about this. So I went and did what I could to calm myself down, get safe, get curious, start wondering, and little ideas trickled into my head. So I think it's something any of us can get to. And I was absolutely blown away at how fast it happened. One thing. And you're so stupid. Why didn't you could have checked. That kind of stuff. Sometimes just being around people who see me as a person is so helpful.
Right.
It's huge. And with people who really live in the worst sandbox, that's big. It's really big. Any of you went to Shane Gallagher's, I don't know what he talked about, but I bet he talks about how important it is just literally to respond, not to push back on their resistance of you, not to resist their resistance of you. And that gets huge in terms of them sorting that out. I've watched many a kid curse a tree, kick rocks, and you know what? They never collude. The rocks and the trees never collude. Wilderness is in harmony. And so there's such a great awakening, such a great mirror that's being held up. Now, I say, look, there's no guarantee if somebody else is out of the box. That Debbie, like if I get out, there's no guarantee Debbie will. But there's no guarantee she won't either. Because we're in response to others. And if I get out, I'm giving her a different Chris to respond to. And then when she wants to self-hate and that sort of thing, well, I get that. I get that. So I can validate that. I can validate I know what it's like to be in that space. And for her to feel heard at those points matters. How many of you have seen the video, It's Not About the Nail? Yeah. There's a book out there called Love Warrior. Anybody? Glennon Doyle. Woman with an eating disorder, addictions. And she's got through school. She's just a mess. And her parents finally said enough. And they were of a particular, I think, Catholic faith. And they said, you go talk to the priest. You have to do this or we're just done with you. And she goes across town, goes to this church, and she goes in, and it's kind of dark and everything. But then there's this room that's lit and has this beautiful red carpet. And she's so struck by the red carpet, she takes off her high heel shoes with her sort of street prostitute clothes on. She takes off the high heels and she loves the feeling of the carpet. And she's going around, sees the candles and kind of sitting there. And then she looks up and sees this icon there, this picture of Mary, the mother of Jesus. And what she feels in that moment is just love. This unconditional love, which is meaning she assigns to the painting, but she doesn't want to leave it. So just wanted to stay in that space and bask in it, and she thought it could help her to heal. And then the priest comes and takes her in a cold, dark room and tells her to repent, and she goes back out and doesn't want to leave that painting because she felt different around that painting. And then there's another book, Tattoos on the Heart. Father Gregory down in West L.A., he has this homeboy. He just works with these gang guys. You go read these books and these beautiful stories about how to respond to people who are in these messes and think so terribly of themselves. And what choices they keep making, and he just responds from that space. And he's pretty honest about how he does it. I think he's pretty straightforward. So and even the people today, I listened to Bishop John Scholl yesterday, and I thought, wow, just keep doing what you're doing. The gentleman this afternoon from Cristobal Colon, what kind of a heart does that take to go reaching for the untouchable, the ignorable? I just don't want to go near him. And he just goes to them. He's the Mother Teresa of Spain in my mind. What a fantastic human being. Yeah, the more we can lay down our stuff, the more we can be okay with their stuff, the better chance we have. And so I try to join them. We have a kind of in our culture, it seems to me, we have a preference for light and we don't like dark. So somebody comes to tell me something about their problem. I want to pat it. It's okay, you'll get past it. Better things are going to come. It doesn't help. It just hurts. So I like to go sit on the couch with them and say, well, I'm just going to sit here until I get what you're feeling, until I can find it in my life. I can't be any help to you until I can find that problem, that pain in my life. And when I do that, then it starts to happen. But I got to be willing to sit on the couch. And I got to be willing to go do that discovery. So these are hard boxes. But they're not impossible. This woman who I've talked to 2 times on the phone, she has been running the perfect life up in Idaho, just chasing it with vim and vigor. And it all fell apart on her. Absolutely fell apart on her. She said, I just want to die. I'm sick of it. I don't want to live anymore. And so I have no idea what to say. I've not tried to preload anything. I just respond to where she's at and go with her and go with her and go with her and go with her. And then when she's ready to hear something, I'll say, well, here's this. Let's talk about way of being. What's that? It's that, this, that. And all of a sudden, she's making discoveries that blow me away. You talked about 2 55-minute periods, and she's making those kinds of discoveries? I don't know how she's doing it. But she intuitively has gone right to where she needs to go in terms of figuring out how to do this. And we need to end. So I've gotten the high sign from the back. It's kind of a crisp. And because I don't obey rules well, you know how it goes. Can I thank you very much for your comments and your attention and what you're willing to bring to this? So thank you.